Let me embroider your cape. A simple phrase, one that might seem trivial at first glance. But for fans of Ascendance of a Bookworm, these 5 words carry the weight of 33 volumes worth of character growth, world building, and lore. Today we're diving into how this single line became one of the most emotional, nay, powerful moments in Miya Kazuki's light novel series, and why this phrase, the ultimate punchline to this series, resonates so deeply with those of us who followed Myne's journey from the very beginning. Hi, I'm the Chattering Magpie, and I'm excited to talk with you about this phrase as I work on my own Bookworm-inspired embroidery project. With the final volume of Ascendance of a Bookworm now translated and released, fans were treated to numerous full-circle moments that tie back to earlier events. Among them, one stands out above the rest. The inscription that Myne leaves on Ferdinand's engagement feystone, which said, "Let me embroider your cape." This short and seemingly generic phrase is packed with subtext that only becomes clear after immersing yourself in this monumental work that is upwards 5 million words long. One needs to be deeply acquainted with Bookworm's world, its culture, its unique magic system, and of course, our irrepressible book-loving heroine, to fully appreciate it. But more than just a phrase, it encapsulates Myne's growth, her relationship with Ferdinand, and the journey that they've both undergone. The significance of this moment begins all the way back in Volume 1, where we first learn how central sewing is to a woman's role in Myne's new world, and where Myne's distaste for sewing becomes almost a defining trait for the rest of the series. In the commoner world, people typically make their own clothes or rely on using second-hand garments, wearing them down until they become rags. On top of making, adjusting, and repairing clothing, it is the job of women to craft for themselves and their families most of their household necessities. And so the ability to craft clothes demonstrated her domestic skill and her practicality, traits that were valued in potential wives. However, Myne had no interest in such activities. With the memories of her past life as a modern-day Japanese woman who valued books and intellectual pursuits above all else, she saw the idea of learning to sew as a frustrating and unnecessary chore. She said that if becoming an accomplished seamstress took away time from her own pursuits, she would just simply not get married. As she bluntly put it, expecting me to consider making thread, weaving cloth and sewing clothes for the family over winter as some important thing was just asking too much. I could say with confidence that I would never, ever care that much about it, and never feel motivated to do it, though I would sew until my hands fell off if I could use the cloth as parchment. At the start of the story, Myne was primarily concerned with her own desires and ambitions, and was unwilling to spend her time on tasks that didn't align with those goals. She was, however, the kind of person who would dedicate tireless efforts to something if it served her deeper needs or helped her advance her ambitions. But as the story progressed, Myne's attitude began to shift. This transformation occurred when she was driven by her desire to make something special for her older sister Tuli. Motivated by a wish to create something that would match her sister's cuteness, Myne decided to make her a hairpin for her baptism, using her crocheting skills that she still remembered from her time in Japan. It was this desire to do something meaningful for someone that she cared about that helped her overcome her initial reluctance and selfishness. However, in a way that almost seems to preempt any overly sentimental interpretation of this gesture, Myne decides to make the hairpin out of many small flowers rather than crafting a single large one. Her reasoning is practical, as she anticipates that she might grow bored or frustrated with the task, and she might not finish it if she commits to doing something too complex. By opting for multiple smaller flowers, she ensures that she can still deliver a completed hairpin, even if she loses interest, before finishing a larger and more intricate design. From that point onward, the hairpins become quite popular. However, Myne, ever the strategist, decides to offload the task of making them onto her mother and Thule. She compensates them generously for their time and effort, but at the same time, these handmade ornaments serve as a dual purpose for Myne. They not only bring in the money, but also help her save up for her own goals. While others are focused on the labor of crafting the hairpins, Myne cleverly uses the situation to her advantage, building both her resources and her business relationships in the process. But she can't escape needlework forever. When she became Rozemyne and transitioned to her new life as a noble girl in training, her head attendant insists that she work on lacework and embroidery. Again, she tries to avoid it however she can, saying that she'd rather just not get married, but she's severely scolded. Riarda was, of course, entirely correct that Rozemyne cannot avoid this task. In the noble's world, embroidery is considered a precious skill. Magic circles are much more efficient if you embroider them yourself or someone who resembles your mana closely does it for you. For the noblemen of Yurgenschmidt, this often means that their capes are embroidered by their mother or their wife, or a sister of the same blood, while noble women embroider their own capes so that they can practice their skills for marriage. In Part 4, Volume 4, we learn that in this world, a woman who wants to confess her feelings to a nobleman typically presents him an embroidered handkerchief. This act serves two purposes. It demonstrates her skill in needlework and signals her interest in him by indicating that she would like to embroider his cape. This gesture is deeply symbolic, as it's akin to giving proof of one's magical circle embroidery skills, while also expressing the desire to engage in the intimate act of embroidering the man's cape, a privilege traditionally reserved for a wife. When a woman asks, "May I embroider your cape?" she's essentially making a request to do something that signifies the bond of marriage for a man. Similarly, a man can ask a woman if she would embroider his cape, carrying the same implication of a serious commitment, often suggesting engagement. This phrase is universally understood in noble circles as a subtle yet clear indication of romantic intent, as demonstrated in the case of Cornelius and Leonore in their own short story. Because embroidery holds such cultural importance, noble girls typically take up sewing as a hobby, using it as a means to practice their future roles as wives. They often sew small items of clothing for their pets or relatives as babies, honing their skills in preparation for the day when they would embroider their husband's cape or create garments for their own family. Myne, however, true to form, continues to avoid sewing wherever she can. Her attendants, concerned about her lack of interest in these essential skills, find themselves in a constant battle to get their lady to practice embroidery. The most effective strategy turns out getting Myne to practice her sewing alongside Charlotte. Once again, Myne is motivated by a cute sister to practice needlework with, as is Charlotte, since both of them seem to want to put their best face forward in the presence of the other. When an enormous embroidery project is suddenly thrust upon Rozemyne, requiring her to create new clothes for Schwartz and Weiss, the library's magic tools, she immediately tries to find a way to offload the task to somebody else. She says, "I had planned to ask a noble daughter with immense girl power and impressively graceful sewing skills to handle it for me. Unfortunately for Myne, as a master of the tools, it's her responsibility to embroider the magic circles herself in order to ensure that they are properly crafted and effective." Horrified by the prospect, she desperately pleads with Ferdinand, attempting to negotiate a way out of it. She says she would rather cancel her engagement than be forced into sewing practice, while Ferdinand remains firm, insisting that this project will help her training and that she should give it her best effort. In the end, after much back and forth, they reach a rather unconventional compromise. Myne would use ink made from mana instead of the traditional thread to create the magic circles, thus giving birth to the invention of invisible ink. It's such a powerful new tool that Ferdinand deems it that they best keep it a secret, as in the wrong hands it could do lots of harm. Once again, Myne's efforts to avoid embroidery lead to unexpected large-scale results that will ultimately benefit her. What began as a desperate attempt to get out of a tedious task doesn't just resolve her immediate dilemma. The mana-based ink actually opens up new possibilities that stretch far beyond Myne's immediate problem, paving the way for significant developments in future volumes. The ink doesn't just replace thread in a literal sense, it also takes on a deeper, more symbolic role. As the series progresses, particularly when Ferdinand is forced to move into Arensbach and the two can only communicate through letters, the invisible ink becomes the thread that keeps them connected. Despite the physical distance and the painful circumstances that separate them, the letters written with this special ink become a powerful means of maintaining and even strengthening their bond. In this way, the ink evolves from a simple workaround for Rozemyne to ensure that she won't have to embroider, to an enduring symbol of connection. It's not just a magical tool for communication, it becomes a metaphor for the relationship and transforms into a crucial part of their emotional and narrative journey. And since we're on the topic of Ferdinand, let's look at his own situation and how the theme applies to him and his own character arc. Ferdinand never had a mother. His birth mother, whom he met only once, died in his place, and his would-be mother died before his baptism, before the two could even get close. As a result, Ferdinand grew up without a mother, and when he was baptized, he did so as a motherless Archduke candidate. Without a maternal figure to embroider his cape, and with no other close female relatives, Ferdinand took it upon himself to embroider the magic circles into his cape that his father had given him. However, Ferdinand's cape met an unfortunate end after his withdrawal to the temple. Veronica stole his cape. She argued that a priest would have no need for a noble's cape, and so for a good while, Ferdinand used the cape he had won as a wager during his Royal Academy days. It's ironic that the blue cape, which we so closely associate with Ferdinand and which frankly looks so good on him, isn't a symbol of his desire to stand out or to showcase his special status. Instead, it's a necessity born from the tragic circumstances of his early life and deep personal loss. The blue cape highlights Ferdinand's overlooked story of being motherless, parentless actually, if you believe as I do that his father wronged and neglected him. It shows how deprived he was of the connections that others take for granted and can be seen as a silent reminder of the emotional void in his life, the loss of both his birth mother and the fragile connection that he had with his father, which was ultimately stolen by Veronica after his father's death. The theft of the cape only deepened Ferdinand's sense of isolation and the loss of even the faintest link to his family. And yet, while the cape can be seen as a symbol of his isolation, it can also be seen as in a positive light. It can also symbolize Ferdinand's reluctant relationship with Heishitze, a Doppelfolgerian from his days at the academy. Heishitze, from whom Ferdinand won the cape, continues to challenge Ferdinand to friendly dinner matches even after all of these years. And though he causes him more trouble and grief, it is at least well-meaning. Ferdinand wears the blue cape until part 4, when he was due to visit the Interduchy tournament. And this time, Sylvester gave him a new ochre cape to replace his old stolen one, so that he could wear Ehrenfest duchy colors at the Interduchy tournament. Rozemyne notes that he was grumbling about how uneasy he felt wearing it, since it lacked all the protective circles he was used to. But he did seem a bit happier than usual. Ferdinand was definitely happy to be a visible part of the group. Unfortunately, the new cape proved to be too little, too late. Although it was meant to symbolize Ferdinand's visible connection to Ehrenfest, it quickly became clear that it couldn't offer the protection that he was used to. During the Turn is Befallen attack, the cape failed to shield him as the monsters attacked. Not only did the creature manage to wound Ferdinand, but it also shred his cape apart. The timing and symbolism of this moment are especially poignant. The destruction of the cape mirrors Ferdinand's own impending fate. Soon after, he would be torn away from Ehrenfest thanks to the machinations of their enemies. Just as the cape Sylvester gave him failed to protect him, Sylvester, who should have been a source of support and protection, was unable to shield Ferdinand from the dangers that awaited him. When Ferdinand's marriage to Detland was arranged, he knew that he was going to be heading into danger. He needed protective circles on his cape, but with time running short, he opted for a rush job. To get the job done quickly, he used Rozemyne's disappearing ink to draw the necessary protective magic circles on the cape. In a way, Ferdinand's cape could be seen as having been embroidered by Rozemyne, even though she didn't directly sew it. The magic circles formed using her mana were drawn by Ferdinand himself. This was, after all, only a temporary cape. It would eventually be replaced by one in Ehrenspach colors, embroidered by his fiancée, and presented to him once they were starbound. In hindsight, there's wonderful irony in Rozemyne's commentary about Ferdinand's exacting standards. She worried whether Detland's cape would meet his approval, while feeling relieved that she wasn't in Detland's position, even thinking, "Thank goodness I'm not the one marrying him." Although the cape he took with him to Ehrenspach appeared to be devoid of any invisible embroidery or protection, its true power was invisible, known only to him and Rozemyne and maybe the retainers. This subtle connection remained hidden until later, when Ferdinand's cape began to glow upon Rozemyne's touch, revealing to the world the invisible bond that they shared. Capes are items that tell many stories. They are the result of a noble's own work, or even more importantly, the result of the work of their loved one. When the terrorists attacked, and Ferdinand's new cape lacked a protective magic circle, it showed us how badly things can go without a proper cape. When Rozemyne was feeling sick after the execution of Hassi's criminals, it was her commoner father's cape that brought her comfort. Heishitze trying to win his cape back from Ferdinand is a part of their ongoing rivalry and the connection between two friends, or frenemies. Ferdinand returning the cape without Heishitze managing to best him painted a heavy picture. He was going somewhere where there was less hope than at the temple where Heishitze had supposedly rescued him from. We also see Rozemyne protect herself and people dear to her with the God of Darkness's cape. And when lovers meet and get even a little bit physical, the noble euphemism for that is the God of Darkness wrapping the Goddess of Light in his cape. Capes symbolize safety. They signify a feeling of belonging. They tell tales of connections. They bring comfort. They're used as an expression of love and care, both familial and romantic. They even symbolize physical expressions of affection. And this connection through clothing is not limited to capes either. While Rozemyne was expected to embroider her own cape, she maintained a deeper bond with her lower city family through the garments that she wore. Her mother, Aoife, became the dyer who dyed the fabric of her dresses, while her sister, Thule, made her ornaments. Receiving a hair ornament for her baptism made by her family was a deeply emotional experience and a source of happiness and strength for Rozemyne, just as was getting engaged in a dress with cloth dyed by her mother and a hair ornament made by her sister. While her family taking care of her clothing was primarily presented as an excuse to have connections with them, it also weaved a story of how cloth, yarn, and pieces of clothing are an important instrument of familiar love. And so, in Part 5, Volume 12, when Rozemyne chose the words for her engagement stone, It was a culmination of a long, long build-up. "Let me embroider your cape" was so much more than just the words that it was made out of. While typically a cliché, the circumstances of both Rozemyne and Ferdinand made it so much more special and meaningful. Rozemyne absolutely hates embroidery. It's something she always avoided. But this time is different. Because she's willing to do something like that for something she truly values above all. For Ferdinand, she's willing to put in the effort. And this time she doesn't even think about passing the job off to someone else. In the final comic, she assures him that while it will take her quite a while, and judging by how much she struggles and by Ferdinand's gentle teasing, it will probably take her years, she is determined to complete the job. Despite Rozemyne's insistence that she's not in love with Ferdinand, she still makes the decision to marry him. She wants him to be part of her family, even going so far as to describe him as her ideal marriage candidate. She feels safe with him, she cares for him, and she wants him to be happy. And she wants to tell him all of that by promising to do something that she's normally not enthusiastic about. Ferdinand has never had a cape embroidered by a family member, but now, for the first time, he was promised that he would finally get one. Rozemyne's decision to embroider it herself was just her way of showing how much he already meant to her and how eager she was to have him as part of her family. For Ferdinand, this simple act carries a profound assurance that he would be cared for, that he could finally feel like he belonged somewhere and to someone, and that his place in the world was finally solidified. This cape would not only be embroidered by someone who deeply cared for him, but it would also be in the color of her hair, a constant reminder of the person that he has grown to love and care for deeply. And alongside this cape, he would wear an engagement feystone that held the words chosen with him in mind, words that would be close to his chest, literally as well as figuratively. Herscher told Rozemyne that the words engraved on an engagement feystone should please the recipient, and I believe that she hit the mark perfectly. The joy Ferdinand felt at her words was so overwhelming that it broke his carefully maintained noble mask for a moment during their engagement ceremony, something quite rare for him. And to crown it all, at that moment he, like the god of darkness, is able to wrap his goddess of light with his cape to shield her as she was having an emotional moment. At that time, the cape wasn't just a piece of clothing, oh no, it was a symbol of their connection, of how far they had come together, and of the future that they would share. The gesture wasn't just about fabric and thread, it was about trust and love and belonging being woven into the very fabric of their lives. And so, we reach the culmination of a bond that Kazuki-sensei built little by little over the course of 33 volumes. A journey that took time, patience, as well as a little bit of heartache and separation. It's a journey so beautifully written and symbolism so well placed that she makes us want to experience it again and again for the sheer joy of finding the hidden clues and connecting once again with those characters, letting their emotions and struggles resonate with us. This story reminds us that despite all the struggles, despite all the challenges, and despite separations from those we love, all the bonds we forge can outlast anything. As long as we're determined enough, those bonds can grow even stronger in times of adversity. So long as we take the time and effort to love and connect, stitch by painstaking stitch, with those around us. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. This was a super fun video to make, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did putting it together. I'm thrilled to announce that YouTube memberships are now available on my channel. If you enjoyed my content and want to help make more videos like this possible, just click that join button below to check out the different tiers and what each offers. Your support directly enables me to create more videos of this and other wonderful works. A special heartfelt thanks to my monthly supporters who've been with me on this journey already. You're the reason I can keep going. And I want to give a special shout out to longtime supporter and resident troublemaker over on our Discord server, Red Tempest. Red, darling, you are a red garnet. Garnets signify vitality, energy, and passion. They're also believed to bring emotional balance, self-confidence, and protection against negative energies. I think I speak for the rest of the gang that we're so grateful that you're with us. Thank you for the memes and all the ways that you make us laugh. No, I don't appreciate you defiling the Ferdinand shrine, but I do thank you for everything else and for supporting this channel. Here's to even more fun times. Alright everyone, do take care. Until next time, bye bye.